Last season, we got to get our first look at Kenny Pickett with the Steelers, and he actually led the team to a winning record, preserving Mike Tomlin's streak, his legendary streak of not having losing season with the Steelers. It's still one of the more impressive stats that we have in the NFL today. And looking ahead, I mean, the Steelers are always competitive, but that division, that AFC North, it's tough. Let's face it, you have Cincinnati, who's been to the AFC Championship game and a Super Bowl in the last 2 years. You have the Baltimore Ravens with, if we know Lamar Jackson is healthy, brand new contract, we know they're going to be good. And you have the Browns, who, this is the first year we're going to see with Deshaun Watson starting for them in the entire season. Is Deshaun going to look like he did previous to the suspension and the holdout? But then you have the Steelers. Again, just the model of consistency with a second-year quarterback that in his first preseason game this year looked good. 6-7, I believe threw a touchdown in that game. The Steelers veterans have put a lot of trust that they think that he's going to be taking that next step in his development. But what say you, Kyle, when you think of the Steelers? Do they actually have a chance at this division?
I think they have a chance. I know that's crazy, but I think they have a chance to knock off two of the best teams in the NFL over the last 5 years. When we talk about the Bengals, who obviously went to the Super Bowl, maybe more the last 3 years for the Bengals, but obviously went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, AFC Championship last year, and Baltimore, who had the best record in the NFL in 2019, or won a playoff game in 2020, they lost in 2021, but Baltimore's been consistently really good the last few years. And so I think Pittsburgh has a chance to catch them, because last year, Pittsburgh was the team that made the most sense to me of any team in the NFL in the first few games of the season, because from the very beginning, I'm like, you drafted Kenny Pickett in the first round, play Kenny Pickett week 1. There's no reason. We know what Mitch Trubisky is. Mitch Trubisky does not give you a better chance to win. And even if he does, this season should not be about that. It is a season of developing Kenny Pickett and figuring out what you have at the position that you have just invested in for the future. Like, you drafted Pickett with the 20th pick in the first round. He's your future. Play him, get him the repetitions. This season doesn't matter for the Steelers. And they started 1-3. And I said after they started 1-3, they will be 2-6 by week 8, because they were playing, and if I have it here correctly, they were playing the Bills, Tampa Bay, the Dolphins, and the Eagles. 3 of those games on the road in a 4-game stretch in the middle of the season last year. I'm like, they will win one of those games and they'll be 2-6. And they were 2-6, and I wrote them off for the rest of the season, because I'm like, the rest of this year is going to be about developing Pickett. They'll get a top draft pick, maybe pick Paris Johnson Jr. from Ohio State. And then the Steelers went 7-2 to end the season last year. I have no idea how they went 7-2 to end last season, because they were awful. On paper, they were one of the 10 worst teams in the NFL. And they came out and went 7-2 to end the season. We saw the real-time development of Kenny Pickett and the connection he had with George Pickens. They traded Chase Claypool for a second-round pick that was at the top of the draft because it was the Bears. They traded Chase Claypool at the trading deadline and got back essentially a first-round pick out of that deal. The Pittsburgh Steelers traded Chase Claypool and went 7-2 the rest of the season. You saw Pickens become a number 1 receiver in real time. Deontay Johnson was the best receiver in the NFL last year that didn't have a touchdown, which was frustrating for someone who had him on his fantasy team, but also he put up like 800 yards. He's a former Pro Bowl receiver, and now he's their wide receiver 2. They brought in Allen Robinson as a wide receiver 3, and obviously they still have Najee Harris, who is, and again, this is just from physical body type. Najee Harris, physical body type, is the most talented running back since Saquon Barkley to enter the NFL. In terms of his physical body type, he is like Derrick Henry Jr. in terms of how physically strong Najee Harris is. And so on the offensive side of the ball, they've been bottom 10 in the league each of the last 4 seasons. And I believe that this season, you're going to see the Pittsburgh Steelers develop in a way that is going to potentially lead to them winning the division.
Well, we know that they still have some good players on their defense. They finally moved off Devin Bush. He's now in Seattle. But Cam Hayward's there, TJ Watt there, all pro. Minkah Fitzpatrick, we've seen him be very good in the past. Was a little bit hit or miss last year. And then they just drafted Joey Porter Jr., right? Hell, even Alex Highsmith was a good player for them in their linebacking core. Hey, if you have a good defense, you're going to win a couple dogfights, which I think the Steelers are going to find themselves in a lot of. I don't expect them to have a lights out electric offense this season, especially because I still have questions about their coordinator, Matt Canada. Like, I didn't like the play calling the last couple years for the Steelers. Hell, Ben Roethlisberger really didn't like the play calling in his last year, regardless of what you think about Ben Roethlisberger and certainly in his final years. I do think that he was limited at times by the play calling of one Matt Canada. And I even saw that last year with rookie Kenny Pickett, where it just seemed like they just were resistant to let them cook when they needed to. I just felt like Matt Canada just kind of runs a boring offense. So that kind of concerns me. That's the one thing that kind of limits how good I think this team really can be. Again, we're just putting a lot of faith on Mike Tomlin because of what he's been able to do over this stretch, this run he's had. But what's it going to take to finally get the Steelers back into contender mode? You know, I'm looking at their win-loss totals in Vegas, right? 8.5 is what the line is set at. So let's go through the schedule a little bit together. So you mentioned week 1, they come out against San Francisco. Is that a winnable game? It's week 1. And every team in the NFL believes in week 1, they have a chance to be the Super Bowl champion. So I believe the 49ers are going to get their best. I think that this game is going to be a lot closer than people really think it's going to be, because when you have a quarterback, certainly like Brock Purdy, who's not a made man at this point, coming off injury, going against that Steelers defense that I mentioned has some dudes, I think that that's going to be a fight. Then they play the Browns. We know they've had ownage over the Browns for quite some time, sans that playoff game. The Raiders, they go into Las Vegas, go against the Houston Texans. So they have a little bit of the softer part of their schedule. And then you have the Ravens in week 5. So those first 3 games, or those first 5 games, 2 division opponents, 2 winnable games, and then a team that's considered a Super Bowl contender in the 49ers. How do you like them in that early season stretch to at least get off on the right foot?
So the thing I always look for when doing the schedule predictions and like trying to predict record going forward in the season, I'll always do, what are the games that they'll be either a 7-point favorite or a 7-point underdog? And of this group, the only game that I point at and say this will definitely be 7-point favorite or underdog is them home against the 49ers, the first game of the season. They'll be underdogs, but I would assume more than 7 points. Other than that, they're favored in 3 of those games. Maybe they're a 7-point favorite on the road against the Texans, but I just think all of these games are coin tosses. And if we keep going down through the schedule, I mean, there's a lot of coin toss games in here for them. And
they have
very few games I can point
to
on the schedule.
They have a fairly early bye because after that 5 games, they have a week 6 bye, and then they're just going the rest of the season.
And they are in a unique position because they play one against the NFC West, which is a division that is very, very hit or miss, we would say. Like, we assume they can beat the Cardinals and the Rams going into this season. The other side of the coin is that they play against the AFC South, which we also know is a pretty crappy division. So if they can take care of business in those games, they could get to that 9-10 win threshold. And the Steelers are the kings of the tiebreakers the last few years. So if the tiebreakers break their way, they'll find their way into the playoffs and just maybe find their way to the top of that division. And the thing that was so unique about them last year, and I think this is going to be the key to this year, as much as we want to talk about Kenny Pickett and Najee Harris and the revamped offense that they have, is the last 7 games of the season last year, they did not allow 20 points in a single game to any of their opponents. The last 7 games of the season, it was 17 points, 16 points, 16, 16, 10, 13, 14 when they played against good. Now there's a question to be had about the offenses they were playing. They were playing against 2 games against Tyler Huntley, the Colts of Jeff Saturday, the Falcons, and the Carolina Panthers. And I believe that was the Jarrett Stidham Raiders too. So, not the best offenses, but at the same time, holding them to under 20 points.
You do have to give them some love too, that they were able to maintain, as you mentioned, those defensive performances where TJ Watt missed a lot of time last year. He did suffer an injury. That's probably why he missed out on being potentially defensive player of the year again a year ago. Then Minkah Fitzpatrick, like I mentioned, last year was a little bit of hit or miss for him. Believe he was dealing with some injuries and was banged up as well. And the whole Devin Bush thing, unfortunately, just I can write off a lot of stuff with Devin Bush to the injury. I thought he was going to be one of the greats at linebacker, but when he suffered that, it just, his entire career just went downhill fast. So I think now with this revamping, this retooling they've done on defense, they might actually be even better, health permitting. And we'll see how Joey Porter Jr. does, right? Obviously a legacy drafting by them. But if you improve that secondary with a guy like he's advertised as, I think they'll be a lot better. Patrick Peterson is actually on this team too.
Yeah, I saw
Ghost
that.
of Patrick Peterson.
Him and Keanu Neal came over, I think, this last year. So they got a couple of pieces on that defense. And let us not forget, it's one of my favorite stats in the NFL that over the last 4 seasons, Mike Tomlin has gone 38, 27, and 1 with this as his quarterback rotation. Mason Rudolph, Duck Hodges, Josh Dobbs, 2 years of the worst Big Ben we've ever seen, where he was just totally broken. I called him Jimmy Garothlisberger. So it's Mason Rudolph, Duck Hodges, Josh Dobbs, Mason Rudolph again, Jimmy Garothlisberger, Mitch Trubisky, and Kenny Pickett. With that as his quarterback rotation, they have gone 38, 27, and 1. So Mike Tomlin is one of the best coaches in the NFL, and that will be the boost that basically keeps him in every game. Because like I said, we went through the schedule a little bit. If you go through that whole schedule, I could find maybe like one game that they're like super, super underdogs in. And outside of that, it's a lot of games that feel like they're going to be either +3 or -3 the whole way. And in those games that are one score or, you know, evenly matched teams, I give Mike Tomlin some credit for being able to coach them through those small margin games in the NFL.
Yeah, you know what's going to be another difference maker here is the fact that they match up so well with the teams in their division. I don't care what talent they're going against, whether it be Lamar, Joe Burrow, or Deshaun, they seem to have a formula for neutralizing the quarterback play of their division opponents, because they were in some close games with Cincinnati last year. They've been in some close games with Baltimore with Lamar under center. And Cleveland, again, I mentioned it, ownage is ownage. They've been owning Cleveland for a while. Again, aside from that one playoff game, it's been mostly all Pittsburgh. You win games in your division, like even if they go 3-3, I think they might be a playoff team with that.
Yeah, because what do you think their record's going to be against the AFC South? Would you guess? They play all 4 teams in the AFC South. What would you guess that their record's going to be?
Obviously, I see them beating the Texans. Colts, I see them beating the Colts this year with the disarray they currently are under. Rookie quarterback, certainly. Titans, that one's kind of a coin flip game for me. 2-2 at the very least. 2-2.
Does it help? Does it help that the Titans game is in Pittsburgh?
It does. If I flip that to 3-1 against that division, then and they go 3-3 in their own division, right? Then they are suddenly 6-4 on that stretch of their schedule alone. Let's give them 2 wins against the NFC West with the Rams and Cardinals,
and then at that point they would be 8-6, and then they would play the Raiders, the Patriots, and the Packers.
And I could see them beating the Raiders this year. That's 9 wins. The Patriots, they win that one. They're a 10-win team. And you said the Packers, and they could beat the Packers. Yes. So that might be 11 wins right there.
If they get to 11 wins, that might be enough to win that division. With Cincinnati and Baltimore, that just might be enough to win that division. Or
and
at the very least, they're in the playoffs.
And those teams are going to beat up on each other too. And those teams obviously have to deal with a tougher schedule than the Steelers do this season.
Yeah, a first place schedule for the Cincinnati Bengals. Not a first place schedule. The Baltimore Ravens are going to end up playing about, 14 of the teams are obviously the same, but the Baltimore Ravens finished second place in that division last year. So they're going to play Miami. They're going to play, if I remember off the top of my head, second place, the Chargers. They're going to play the Chargers this year. That's slightly more difficult games. I mean, if Pittsburgh's in that 10-11 range, I think you and I are on the same page. We're both betting the over on that 8.5 wins for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And as we're talking it through, that doesn't even necessarily mean we need a big breakthrough for Kenny Pickett.
Although I do see it coming. I do think that he is going to be better than he was last season. There's just a poise, and I kind of am starting to buy the hype that these veterans are putting down on him.
Yeah, Pittsburgh has all sorts of different ways that they can win. We've seen that Mike Tomlin has, over the years, adapted adapted in a way that other teams, depending on the personnel that he has. They were a defensive team that won the Super Bowl back in 2009, and then they moved to a team that was built around Big Ben and Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, and I think they were the second highest scoring offense in the NFL that year. And then they pivoted the last few. I mean, obviously they haven't had the top of the top level success. They haven't won a playoff game yet, but they've been an above 500 team every year, despite the fact that they've had, again, Mason Rudolph, Duck Hodges, Josh Dobbs, Jimmy Garoppolo, Mason Rudolph again, Mitch Trubisky, and Kenny Pickett as their quarterbacks. So despite that fact, they've pivoted to a defensive first team. Personnel has changed, and they've been able to adapt and always find a way to win 8 or 9 games.
All right, guys. Well, what do you think about the Pittsburgh Steelers and their chance to win the AFC North this season? We'd like to hear that below. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on all our social medias. From Juju and Kyle, stay safe, happy, and healthy. We will see you next time.